I never thought I'd be writing one of these posts, but here I am at 2 a.m., unable to sleep, trying to make sense of what just happened in my life. I'm Sarah, 28, and until 3 days ago, I thought I had a pretty normal marriage. Sure, it wasn't perfect, but whose is, right? I've been with my husband Jake for 7 years, married for 4, and we live in Ohio in this duplex situation where his mom, Linda, lives literally next door. Yeah, I know how that sounds, but when we got married, it seemed like a practical arrangement. His dad had passed away 2 years before our wedding, and Linda was struggling financially. Jake said it would be temporary. That was 4 years ago. Living next to your mother-in-law is exactly as fun as it sounds. Linda has opinions about everything I do. My cooking is too bland, then too spicy. I work too much, but also I'm not ambitious enough. I clean the wrong way. I dress too casually. I'm too focused on my career instead of starting a family. The woman has made passive-aggressive comments about my inability to get pregnant into an art form. Well, when I was your age, I already had Jake, she'll say, while stirring her coffee, like my uterus is personally disappointing her. Jake works as a software developer for a mid-sized company, and I'm a marketing coordinator at a local firm. We've been trying to save up to buy our own place, somewhere far enough from Linda that she can't just pop over whenever she feels like rearranging my spice rack or commenting on how I fold towels. Every time I brought up moving, Jake would say soon, or we need to save more, or mom needs us right now. I was starting to think soon was Jake speak for never. But 3 days ago, everything changed. I came home early from work with a splitting headache, planning to take some Advil and maybe nap before Jake got home. I was in our bedroom when I heard him come in, talking on his phone. He was speaking quietly, but our duplex has thin walls and I could hear him clearly from upstairs. Yeah, I found a great 2-bedroom apartment in Capitol Hill. The lease starts next month and the rent is actually pretty reasonable for Seattle. I think it's going to work out perfectly. My heart literally jumped. Seattle? Jake had been talking about a potential promotion that might involve relocating, but I didn't think it was serious. And he'd found us an apartment? I felt this surge of pure joy that I hadn't experienced in years. We were finally going to start our real life together, away from Linda's constant surveillance and criticism. I practically bounced down the stairs, ready to throw my arms around him and start planning our move. "Jake," I called out, probably grinning like an idiot, "I heard you on the phone." I never thought I'd be writing one of these posts, but here I am at 2 a.m., unable to sleep, trying to make sense of what just happened in my life. I'm Sarah, 28, and until 3 days ago, I thought I had a pretty normal marriage. Sure, it wasn't perfect, but whose is, right? I've been with my husband Jake for 7 years, married for 4, and we live in Ohio in this duplex situation where his mom, Linda, lives literally next door. Yeah, I know how that sounds, but when we got married, it seemed like a practical arrangement. His dad had passed away 2 years before our wedding, and Linda was struggling financially. Jake said it would be temporary. That was 4 years ago. Living next to your mother-in-law is exactly as fun as it sounds. Linda has opinions about everything I do. My cooking is too bland, then too spicy. I work too much, but also I'm not ambitious enough. I clean the wrong way. I dress too casually. I'm too focused on my career instead of starting a family. The woman has made passive-aggressive comments about my inability to get pregnant into an art form. Well, when I was your age, I already had Jake, she'll say, while stirring her coffee, like my uterus is personally disappointing her. Jake works as a software developer for a mid-sized company, and I'm a marketing coordinator at a local firm. We've been trying to save up to buy our own place, somewhere far enough from Linda that she can't just pop over whenever she feels like rearranging my spice rack or commenting on how I fold towels. Every time I brought up moving, Jake would say soon, or we need to save more, or mom needs us right now. I was starting to think soon was Jake speak for never. But 3 days ago, everything changed. I came home early from work with a splitting headache, planning to take some Advil and maybe nap before Jake got home. I was in our bedroom when I heard him come in, talking on his phone. He was speaking quietly, but our duplex has thin walls and I could hear him clearly from upstairs. Yeah, I found a great 2-bedroom apartment in Capitol Hill. The lease starts next month and the rent is actually pretty reasonable for Seattle. I think it's going to work out perfectly. My heart literally jumped. Seattle? Jake had been talking about a potential promotion that might involve relocating, but I didn't think it was serious. And he'd found us an apartment? I felt this surge of pure joy that I hadn't experienced in years. We were finally going to start our real life together, away from Linda's constant surveillance and criticism. I practically bounced down the stairs, ready to throw my arms around him and start planning our move. "Jake," I called out, probably grinning like an idiot, "I heard you on the phone."
I mean, things have been stressful with your mom and everything, but that's why moving will be so good for us. It's not just mom. Jake ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I'd seen him do 1,000 times when he was frustrated. Sarah, we want different things. We always have. What are you talking about? We want the same things. We've talked about this. We want our own place, maybe kids someday, to travel more. When was the last time we actually talked about any of that? Really talked, not just mentioned it in passing. He stood up and started pacing. When was the last time we had a real conversation about anything? I opened my mouth to answer, but nothing came out. When was the last time? We've fallen into this routine of work, dinner, TV, bed, rinse and repeat. Even our conversations have become predictable. How was work? Fine. What do you want for dinner? I don't care, whatever you want. Did you see what happened on that show? Yeah, crazy. See? Jake said, reading my silence correctly. We're like roommates who occasionally sleep together. That's not a marriage, Sarah. But we can fix this, I said, hearing the desperation in my own voice. Couples go through rough patches. That's normal. We just need to work on it. Jake stopped pacing and looked at me with something that might have been regret. There's something else. My blood turned to ice. What's something else? I've met someone else. The room tilted. I gripped the arm of the chair so hard my knuckles went white. You've been cheating on me? It's not like that. It's not some sordid affair. I met her through Mom, actually. Patricia's daughter, Tanya. You remember Patricia from Mom's book club? I remembered Patricia. Sweet older lady who always complimented Linda's cookies and asked polite questions about our marriage. I had no idea she had a daughter. Tanya just graduated with her teaching degree, Jake continued, and there was something in his voice when he said her name that he hadn't used when talking to me in years. She's everything I've been looking for, Sarah. She's sweet and nurturing, and she actually wants the same things I want. And what things are those, exactly? I asked, surprised by how steady my voice sounded when everything inside me was collapsing. A real family. Kids. A wife who wants to be a wife, not someone who sees marriage as a checkbox on her career timeline. That stung, because it felt designed to hurt. I never said marriage was a checkbox, and I do want kids. We've been trying. Have we? Really? Because it seems like every time we talk about it, you bring up your career goals or wanting to wait until we have more money or until we move or until something else gets settled first. Was that true? I tried to think back to our conversations about starting a family.
Had I been making excuses? I thought I was being practical, responsible. Wasn't it smart to wait until we were more financially stable? Mom always said, Jake started, then caught himself. Mom always said what? I demanded. He looked uncomfortable. She could tell you weren't really ready for the kind of life I want. Your mother has been sabotaging our marriage from day one. The words exploded out of me. She criticizes everything I do, makes me feel like I'm never good enough, and now you're telling me she's been matchmaking you with other women behind my back. She introduced me to Tanya at the church potluck 3 months ago, Jake said defensively. It wasn't matchmaking. It was just, we got to talking, and I realized what I'd been missing. 3 months. He'd been emotionally cheating on me for 3 months, probably longer if he'd been thinking about divorce for a long time, like he'd said. So what now? I asked, feeling numb. You just pack up and leave for Seattle with your teacher girlfriend while I figure out how to rebuild my entire life?
The divorce doesn't have to be ugly, Jake said, like he was offering me a consolation prize. We can split everything fairly, you can keep the furniture, and I'll take care of the legal fees. How generous of him. 4 years of marriage reduced to splitting up the furniture. That's when I heard it. The sound of Linda's back door opening and closing. A minute later, there was a knock on our front door. Jake and I looked at each other. The timing was too perfect to be coincidental. "I'll get it," Jake said, but I was already moving toward the door. Linda stood on our porch wearing her favorite floral housecoat and a concerned expression that looked about as genuine as a $3 bill. "Oh, Sarah, honey, I heard raised voices. Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine, Mom," Jake said quickly, appearing behind me. "Actually, everything's not fine," I said, stepping aside so she could see Jake. "Your son was just telling me about his new girlfriend." Linda's eyes widened in what I now recognized as fake surprise. "Girlfriend? Jake, what is she talking about?" The performance was Oscar-worthy, really. If I hadn't just learned about her matchmaking activities, I might have believed she was genuinely shocked. "Mom, please don't," Jake said quietly. "Oh, sweetie," Linda said, reaching out to touch his arm. "I know this must be so difficult for you. Sometimes marriages just don't work out the way we hope they will." There it was. Not "I'm sorry to hear this" or "Have you tried counseling?" Just acceptance, like she'd been expecting this news. "How long have you known?" I asked her directly. "Known what, dear?" "About Tanya, about Jake's plans to leave me, about the apartment in Seattle. How long have you known?" Linda glanced at Jake, and I saw something pass between them.
A look that confirmed what I'd suspected. They'd been planning this together. "Sarah, I think you're upset and maybe not thinking clearly," Linda started. "Don't." My voice came out sharper than I'd ever used with her before. "Don't you dare gaslight me right now. You introduced them, didn't you? You've been pushing Jake toward her for months." "I simply introduced two lovely young people who seem to have a lot in common," Linda said, her voice taking on that sweet, condescending tone she used when she was about to deliver a particularly cruel observation. "I can't help it if they connected. While he was married. To me. Sarah, honey, I've watched you two for 4 years. You've never seemed truly happy together. Jake has always been such a family-oriented boy, and you've always been so focused on other things. Other things. Like my career. Like having ambitions beyond being Jake's wife and Linda's daughter-in-law." "What did you tell him about me?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. Linda sighed dramatically. "I've always been honest with Jake about my concerns. You're a lovely girl, Sarah, but you and Jake want different things. He needs someone who can make him truly happy, someone who shares his values. Someone more like Tanya? Tanya is a sweet girl. She wants to be a mother, she loves to cook and take care of people. She goes to church every Sunday and volunteers at the children's hospital. She's the kind of woman who would appreciate having a good man like Jake." The implication was crystal clear. I was not that kind of woman. I didn't appreciate Jake. I was selfish and career-focused and somehow deficient as a wife. "Get out," I said quietly. "Sarah," Jake started. "Get out," I screamed, louder than I'd ever screamed in my life. "Both of you, get out of my house." "Technically, it's Jake's house," Linda said, which was possibly the worst thing she could have said in that moment. Something inside me snapped. 4 years of criticism, 4 years of feeling like I wasn't good enough, 4 years of watching Linda manipulate Jake and undermine our marriage, and now she had the audacity to stand in my living room and act like I was the problem. "You know what, Linda? You win. You got what you wanted. Jake is leaving me for your hand-picked replacement. Congratulations. I hope Tanya knows what she's signing up for, because being married to your son means being married to you too, and that's apparently a package deal she's willing to accept." I turned to Jake. "And you're a coward. Instead of talking to me about our problems, you ran to Mommy and let her find you a new wife. You couldn't even break up with me honestly. You were planning to sneak off to Seattle and, mail me divorce papers? That's not how it was going to happen." "Then how was it going to happen?
Were you going to keep seeing Tanya behind my back until you worked up the courage to leave me? Or were you hoping I'd just figure it out eventually and make it easy for you? Jake's silence was answer enough. I want you both out of my house. Now. Sarah, we should talk about the logistics, Jake started. There's nothing to talk about. You want a divorce? Fine. You'll hear from my lawyer. I walked to the front door and held it open. Linda gathered her house coat around herself like wounded dignity and marched out. Jake hesitated. Sarah, I never meant for it to happen this way. But it did happen this way, I said, and now you get to live with it. After they left, I sat on my couch in the silence and tried to process what had just happened. My marriage was over. My husband had been having an emotional affair for months. My mother-in-law had orchestrated the whole thing, and I was completely alone. That's when I called Jess. Jess answered on the second ring. Hey girl, what's up? I opened my mouth to explain and instead just started sobbing. Big, ugly, gut-wrenching sobs that came from somewhere deep in my chest. Sarah, what's wrong? Talk to me. Through the tears, I managed to get the story out. Jess listened without interrupting, making those supportive and oh honey sounds that best friends are so good at. When I finished, there was a long pause. I'm coming over, she said finally. You don't have to. I'm already grabbing my keys. Don't you dare tell me I don't have to come over. Have you eaten anything today? I couldn't remember. Time had become weird and fluid since Jake's revelation. I'm bringing Chinese food and wine. Lots of wine. Jess arrived 20 minutes later with enough Chinese takeout to feed a small army and 2 bottles of wine. She took one look at me and pulled me into a hug that smelled like her familiar perfume and safety. Okay, she said, settling us both on the couch with cartons of lo mein and plastic forks. First we eat, then we drink, then we plan your fabulous revenge. I don't want revenge, I said, though even as I said it, I wasn't sure it was true. Okay, then we plan your fabulous new life. Same difference. We ate in comfortable silence for a while. Jess had always been good at knowing when to talk and when to just be present. After we'd made a decent dent in the food and opened the first bottle of wine, she finally spoke. Can I ask you something? And will you promise to really think about your answer? I nodded. Are you heartbroken because you lost Jake? Or are you heartbroken because your life just got turned upside down? The question caught me off guard. I started to say both, but then I really thought about it. Was I devastated about losing Jake specifically, or was I devastated about losing the idea of Jake, the security of being married, the future I'd planned? I started slowly, I think I'm more upset about being blindsided than I am about losing him. Does that make me a terrible person? It makes you honest, Jess said, topping off my wine glass. Sarah, I've been your friend for 10 years. I've watched you with Jake, and I've watched you with Linda. You haven't been happy in a long time. You've been surviving. But marriage is supposed to be work, right? You're supposed to fight for it. You can't fight for something when you're the only one fighting. Jake checked out of this marriage months ago, maybe longer. He just didn't have the balls to tell you until he had a replacement lined up. The wine was making me feel warm and loose, and for the first time in hours, I felt like I could breathe properly. What am I going to do, Jess? You're going to get the best divorce lawyer in Ohio. You're going to take Jake for everything he's worth, and then you're going to build an amazing life that has nothing to do with him or his psycho mother. I laughed despite everything. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple, but it's doable. And Sarah, you're stronger than you think you are. You've been living next door to that woman for 4 years, and you haven't committed murder. If you can survive Linda, you can survive anything. We talked until nearly 3 a.m., making lists of lawyers to call and apartments to look at. Jess insisted on sleeping on my couch, claiming she didn't trust me to be alone on my first night as a single woman. As I finally crawled into bed, my bed, not our bed, I felt something I hadn't expected: relief. For the first time in years, I didn't have to worry about Linda's opinion of my dinner choices or whether Jake was secretly disappointed in me. I didn't have to pretend to be someone I wasn't. Jake had chosen Tanya because she was everything I wasn't.
But maybe, just maybe, being everything I wasn't was actually the best thing that could have happened to me. Now, 3 days later, I'm lying here at 2 a.m. writing this all out, trying to make sense of it. Part of me wonders if I should have fought harder for my marriage. Part of me wonders if I'm a terrible person for feeling relieved. And part of me is already planning my new life in a city where no one knows me as Jake's wife or Linda's disappointing daughter-in-law. So tell me, Reddit, am I the asshole for being secretly glad my husband left me for his mother's choice of replacement?
Or am I just finally waking up from a 4-year nightmare? If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life trauma. Got a take on the situation? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We love hearing from you.